You're listening to InfoQuench with Jeff.
And Amy, a podcast on how to be more efficient
And effective
in
everyday life. Hey everybody, and welcome to InfoQuench. On this episode of InfoQuench, we're going to be talking about something a little bit more serious, and that is how to care for a loved one that's in the hospital.
Yes, so if you have a loved one in the hospital, or maybe just a friend or a coworker that you're going to visit and you're not really sure what to do to help, we have a few tips.
I think we've all been there as well. I mean, we all have had someone close to us in the hospital, and all you really want to do is make that stay as you know, you don't want them to remember it. You want them to have a good time in there. You want them to party. You want them to take their mind off whatever's ailing them.
Exactly. Yeah, definitely. You need to throw a big party for anybody in the hospital. That's the best way to deal with that situation.
I think it would be fun if you were allowed to do that, but I don't think it's very feasible, is it?
No. And, I recently, well, not recently, it's been a couple years back now, my father had a brainstem stroke, and we spent a lot of time in the hospital during that situation, and I think we'll probably dedicate a future episode where we go in a little bit more in depth into his specific condition.
I would really love to get him involved in one way or another. If we could get him, recorded or something like that would be great.
Yeah, so we'll be able to do something like that down the road. But during that time, we really learned a lot about having a loved one in the hospital and what are some of the things that you can do to just ease the process. And I think one of the main things for us was, it sounds strange, but actually keeping a bit of a journal. So my mother and I spent a lot of time in a waiting room during, the initial procedures, during the initial admission process. And then also just, during when doctors were doing tests and that sort of thing, we would be out in the waiting area. So we took that time. We had a book where we really just wrote down everything around the medical situation that my father was going through. So any procedures that were done, we documented them with the dates. We made sure we tracked doctors' names and medications, and it allowed us to... It's important
because you never know when you're going to have to get back to that.
Oh, and we referred to it constantly. It allowed us to go back, and if we needed to research anything or maybe just educate ourselves on certain medications so that we could ask the proper questions.
There's like a revolving door of doctors as well that deal with the same patient, so it's nice to keep it all straight.
It gave us something to focus on while we were in the waiting room. That's a difficult time frame when you're spending that time just wondering what's happening, when your loved one is with the doctor.
Gives you focus.
It does. And it also, just having the information there, when you're in that level of emotional state, it's hard to remember the details.
Right, exactly.
So if you can get them down on paper while they're fresh and you refer to them later on, it's also a time where you can document any medical history or things that you think may be contributing to a condition or could have a possible implication that the doctor should be made aware of. So having a journal, I think, is a key tip that I would just like to...
Another great thing about having the journal is the patient can look back after the fact and see exactly what it is that was administered, what they went through, what kind of surgeries or whatever. And if they wanted to do some kind of like a book or something like that, they have all that information right at hand.
That's right. I mean, I think that most of us are familiar in New Brunswick. We don't have an electronic record of our medical records that are readily available to us as patients.
Right.
And recording that on our own is definitely taking ownership of our own medical history, and it's a great way to go. It's a valuable resource to have down the road.
It makes a lot of sense.
Having that for the patient themselves to reference back is definitely a valuable resource. So another tip that I'd like to mention is just to pay attention, if you have a loved one, to what the nurses are doing in terms of care, and maybe ask questions about what you can do to help out. We all know that our medical system is overburdened.
It's strained.
One of the things that I realized in the amount of time I spent at my father's bedside is just watching the nurses and how hard they work. They have
They really do. They're on their feet the whole time.
and it's hard work that they do. So if there's something extra care that you can do to help your loved one, it could be something as simple as, for instance, if you're watching a nurse swab their mouth with a mouth swab, just
Yeah,
maybe
you can learn
asking
how
a
to do
question. Exactly, ask them how to do that, how you can help. So in between when they're giving care, that if you're there visiting, how you can help out your loved one. And also, ask questions around the monitoring devices so that you understand what you're looking at. If
Heart
there's-
rate and blood pressure and stuff like that. Is that
yeah,
what you mean?
so any of the
Yeah.
digital monitoring equipment, feel free to ask the questions, and
Yeah.
they'll be. I've always found that they were always happy to explain it to me, and that way, if I saw something off, it's just an extra set of eyes, and you can ask the question.
I've always said you would have made a great doctor.
Oh, thanks, Adam. But really, we're having a loved one there. We're having that extra set of eyes. We're going to pay more attention than anybody. And like I said, we've got busy nurses, we've busy medical staff. They do an amazing job. But anything that you can do to help keep yourself educated in the process is going to support your loved one.
Alleviates the workload too for the nurses. We can't really do the doctor's stuff. We can't write, prescriptions and stuff. But can you imagine?
There are limits.
Just take 5 of these and call me in the morning.
Another thing that we ran into is when you're in a moment of crisis and you have a loved one going through significant medical issues, you have friends and family who really want to be updated on what's happening, and that can be hard. It's hard to get the word out. So if people are asking how they can help, maybe designate one of those people close to you to be a liaison who can then communicate
and
the information out to the people who need to know, so that's one less thing you need to worry about. If you're in a waiting room or at a bedside, you don't want to have to worry about who's being informed of the current status of the medical condition of your loved one. So appoint a liaison that can help you do that. That way you're communicating to one person and then they can get the information out.
One of the things that we learned as well when we were in our situation in the hospital was if someone really does want to help, by all means, let them. It makes everything go a lot more smooth, and it just helps in every way.
It does, and it gives that person a sense of purpose, and they truly do want to help out. So accept that help and let them ease the burden. One of the things that we did is we actually started a private Facebook group that was just for close family. So obviously, there are certain things that you would refrain from sharing on social media or electronically, but just to keep our close family updated on my father's medical situation, we created a closed group, and it was a great way just to let his siblings know where things
his progress
stood.
was at, and
We could do a quick post and just give some general information. And again, having actually, Jeff, you acted as really our liaison.
yes, I was a social media guru throughout all of that.
Right, he took on just making sure everybody was kept informed. And last but not least, in terms of taking care of a loved one, make sure you take care of yourself. It is so easy to go hours without eating, not getting proper rest, feeling like you need to be, at the bedside around the clock. But if you end up sick yourself, it can compromise the patient. So take care of yourself, and then they always say
super important
They
to
say
do.
on an airplane, when the oxygen mask comes down, you need to put
you
on
need to put it on yourself first so you can
right?
save everybody else.
Exactly. So make sure that you look after yourself during that situation.
Yeah.
So those are some things if you have a loved one in the hospital, but we'll also would like to talk about some tips around if you have maybe somebody who you're not quite as close to, but you're going to visit, or you've heard maybe a friend is in the hospital and you want to know
Or a
how to
coworker, or no question.
And it can be hard. I mean, it's hard to figure out what to buy. We're not big gift givers anyway. It's hard to figure out what people need in their lives, and
It is.
And in a hospital setting, it's even more difficult. There's a lot of restraints around
Flowers.
what you can bring in.
You can't bring flowers right now.
Right. Well, and flowers because of allergies, things with scents
Right.
can be an issue. If you are
Fruit
thinking,
baskets are okay though.
they can be, but even depending on the condition of the patient, they may have certain food restrictions.
Right.
They may not even be on solid food. So if you
You
don't
wanna-
know for sure, you don't want to be bringing them
Right.
food that they can't eat.
They can
That
just
could be-
look at longingly and not be able to eat it. That would be horrible.
So some of the things that you can do is, you can help out with some of the things that they're going to be paying for anyway when they're in the hospital. So you can often get gift cards for things like the cable services. So if they have a television set up by their bedside,
Right.
a lot of the hospitals will allow you to get a gift certificate that will help pay for the cable service, or if they have a telephone set up, even sometimes they'll have gift cards that can be used in the gift shop for newspapers
right.
or food.
Magazines.
Yes. If you want to help out the loved ones of the patient, you can maybe help through a parking pass. I
Right.
know gas cards and parking passes are invaluable to somebody who's spending a lot of time visiting a loved
Yeah.
one in the hospital. So those are some ideas around really practical gifts. Also, one of the things that I learned is that nurses actually don't provide any nail care to patients in the hospital. I don't know if that's universal, but I know here in St. John, New Brunswick,
they don't clip nails.
So there are services that provide that, and of course that's an important part of the of the care of the patient. So that would be another option for gift certificates. There's even some hairdressing shops that either visit the hospital or are located directly in the hospital. So hair care service could be another practical option for a gift certificate. If you're looking to actually bring in something, that you can tangible, that you can hand to the person, socks and slippers are always great for hospital patients.
Right.
They have the socks that have the grippers on the bottom so that they're,
Onesies.
so they don't slip. Onesies?
Why not?
Well, it might make nursing care a little hard, but
I suppose depends though. What if you have a broken arm? You can still do it with a onesie and be comfy.
what are you thinking about as a onesie?
Isn't it like just one, just like pajamas that are just one piece?
Oh, okay. Yes.
Isn't that what a onesie is?
Yes. Okay.
What were you thinking it was?
I don't know. That's what I was thinking. Yeah.
Oh no, it wasn't. What were you thinking?
That's what I was thinking.
All right.
Other items might be puzzles. People like to do crossword puzzles or Sudoku.
What about those adult coloring books as well?
Yes, those are
Yeah.
really popular. I actually, the first time I heard adult coloring books, I thought they were something much
X-rated, yeah. So
much
did
more
I. So did
risque.
I. It was like Penthouse X-rated adult coloring books. Yeah.
And there you go. Lotion, we mentioned, but not scented lotion. Sometimes just a throw. If somebody has a favorite blanket or a throw from their home and you're able to bring that in, that can be a comforting thing for them. Lip balms. It gets really dry in hospitals, so anything that's moisturizing
Such a sterile environment.
Yes.
The lighting, everything. You can get them sunglasses too. Why not? Get those, wear their sunglasses instead of looking up at those fluorescent lights.
Yeah, it's a great idea.
Yeah, I thought so. It wasn't in your list though, was it?
No, I know.
No.
I missed that one.
Yeah,
I missed it.
so there you go.
Completely off the radar.
Right, sunglasses.
Books and magazines are popular items. But again, be conscious. There's sometimes patients have reading difficulties. They can have issues that are affecting their vision or concentration. Audiobooks might be another option for if those are the the situations that you're encountering. Or even buying an iTunes card so that people can purchase music or audiobooks. An extra long charger for their phone. So if they
That's
do
important.
have a cell phone, and sometimes the plug in the hospital may be located a little further away from the bed. So if you are able to get your hands on an extra long charger that they can make use of, it might be a little bit more of an expense, but I know it would be something that would
Not
be
on
really
Wish.
welcome.
You can find them on Wish for like $2.
Oh, Wish.com. Do you want to give a little Wish.com
another-
plug? Because Jeff
Well, nah.
is...
Most probably know about Wish, but it's a knockoff Chinese place where you can get online. You can get cheap products, and most of the time they're not so great. Some of the time they're pretty cool, and that's what I get to say about Wish.
Well, you recently got pens from Wish.
Yeah, 2 of which leaked, and then I sent them an email and say, "Hey, 2 of these pens leaked," and then they sent my money back.
Well, there you
which
go.
is
So you get a full
incredible.
refund.
And I
But
got to keep the pens. They didn't ask for the pens back, and I didn't offer them.
Well,
so they ain't getting them.
how many pens were there altogether?
9.
Well, there you go. So you
Yeah.
still had 7 working pens
I
that are
know.
essentially free.
I know, it's pretty good.
I think that that's a win.
I actually wanted to originally just say, hey, just send me 9 pens again. No big deal. You don't have to give me my money back. But then I was like, 2 that don't work, I'll go for that. Why not?
So Wish.com may be a good source for an extra long phone charger or some leaky pens if you're in the market.
Back to the serious talk.
All right. So, other things to keep in mind when you're visiting, if it's flu season or really just any time, just make sure you're washing your hands. If it is flu season, they'll often have Purell. Well, they'll have some hand sanitizers. They'll have masks and gloves. If they're out there for you to use, if you feel like you have any cold symptoms, just do your patients a favor and stay away. But
of course, under certain circumstances, you don't even want to go to the hospital.
Exactly. So if you're going through pneumonia or flu or anything highly contagious, stay away. Sometimes that's the best thing you can do. You could always send a card in with somebody else to let them know that
Make
you're
sure you
thinking
wash
of
the
them.
card before you send it, though.
That's right.
So there's
Put
no
it in-
germs in it.
Yeah, maybe put it in a Ziploc bag.
Wear gloves. Anyway.
And some other tips while you're visiting: you don't overextend your stay. I guess that goes for any kind of visit.
People
doesn't
get
it?
pretty exhausted pretty quickly.
They do. Well, particularly when they're in the hospital. They say 20 minutes on, and really I am watching a lot of people come and go when I was in the hospital with my dad. 20 minutes is probably a good average. I think people get a little mentally exhausted.
Though. Sometimes people just don't want you to leave as well,
Well, and I guess one of the things when you do leave is maybe let them know when you'll be coming back for another visit. So that if they're in a long-term stay situation, it gives them something to look forward to.
No question.
So, let them know. And if you're able to check in before you come and visit, do that. So if you're able to check in with the patient, depending on their condition, by sending a text message or checking in with a loved one, just make sure that it is a good time to visit. Sometimes they have tests set up and they may be gone when you go to visit them. So checking in may be helpful, and just make sure that they are up for company. And if you are visiting and say a doctor pops in or a nurse pops in to do some care, make sure that you just excuse yourself and step out into the hallway to make sure that they get the privacy that they need during that time. And I'm sure they understand, and a good time to go grab yourself a coffee or something and then come back.
Another thing too, though, is sometimes it's really good for you as a family member to keep the patient informed of things that perhaps they don't know, like that the doctors and the nurses perhaps didn't tell them, that they talk to you about, and that they have every right to know, about future surgeries or whatever. Like, you can be that person to keep them informed, and that would, in turn, I think that would make them a lot more comfortable to know than
Right.
not know.
I guess that would be more if it's a family member.
Right,
or
as a family member. You don't want to do it as a stranger.
Right.
That would be cool, though. Go into somebody else, just as a stranger, go to somebody else's, bedside and just start telling them things. Oh, God. What a bad practical joke that would be. You've been punked. Anyway.
No, definitely. By all means, if it's somebody who's close to you, and the doctor or nurse comes in, and obviously if they're close to you, you're probably want to keep yourself informed so you can keep the patient informed. But if you're just visiting a friend or a coworker, be sure to excuse yourself and give them the privacy that they need.
Thanks for clearing that up.
That could get awkward.
Now everybody has the proper information, which is good.
I need to know my office mates' the date of their next surgery. Something else I noticed in the hospital, there aren't a lot of clocks around that are within view of the patient. I know I like to know what time it is.
Or what day it is.
So having a clock and a calendar in eyesight of the patient is, I think, really helpful.
Probably get them on Wish.
Yes.
Anyway.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely some great electronic clocks that you can get, and that are easily visible.
Well, we got a fantastic one for your father that had like the time, the date, what else did it have?
Yeah, and
the
temperature.
month,
It was a digital clock,
right?
And that we'd bought off Amazon.
Yeah, fantastic.
Which we used when he had gone for the physical rehabilitation at Stan Cassidy. But while he was actually at the St. John Regional Hospital, we just used a basic analog clock. And below it, I hung just a sheet of paper each day. It had the day of the week and the month and date.
So that he knew what day it was, what month. And
Yeah,
everything.
just so, because you
Yeah.
can often lose track of time and
Easily.
can make you feel even more isolated in a hospital situation, particularly if you're in a spot where you don't even have a window. Not having a sense of what time it is can be disorienting. So if you do have somebody in the hospital, just have a look to see if they have a clock and eyesight, and if a calendar can be helpful. Just
Or
so
a
they can track the
radio.
time.
A radio is super important as well.
Yeah, so a radio is something that we used when my father was in the hospital before he was able to make use of a television, and listening just to CBC to keep up on current events. You can always check in with the nurses to make sure that the volume's appropriate if they're in a shared ward, but we, didn't have any complaints. We kept it at a relatively low volume.
There weren't
and
any complaints, which was great. And you don't want to bother other patients for sure.
And in Dad's situation, because he wasn't able to communicate for some time, we actually put a little note directly on the radio with the station
That he liked to listen to, that's right.
Yeah, so that if it did get off the station or a button got hit, at least a nurse would know where to program it.
Right.
I think communication overall is key. I actually hung up notes by my dad's bedside just to remind nursing staff of different things.
Well, that he understood what they were saying, and he wasn't, when he was like locked in, he could still understand what everybody was saying, even though he couldn't communicate back.
Right. So the nature of my father's stroke, a brainstem stroke, caused him to have locked-in syndrome,
Right.
which essentially made it so that he was, completely functional mentally, but he was completely paralyzed physically. He was able to eventually start blinking to
Right.
communicate, once for yes, twice for no. But it was a couple of months before he could start to make
That's right,
sound.
and that's where you said about communication is incredibly important, and not just in in your father's situation, but almost every situation. Communication could always be better while you're in the hospital.
And some people may think that having notes up around a bedside would be, I don't know, obnoxious or maybe condescending to the nursing staff, but I didn't receive anything but positive feedback from them. So some of the notes we would have would be just a reminder that my father needed glasses. So
Right.
once he was, able to be opening his eyes, he wasn't able to communicate that if they had forgotten to put his glasses on, that he would need those, so he would be essentially blind without them. So just having a note above his bed, so
Yeah.
you've got staff that are changing shifts. They've got so many things on the go, and of course they're concentrating on the most important things that are essential to life. Monitoring vitals, administering medication. So simple things like just making sure that my father had his glasses on,
Yes.
and having a note around that was an important thing. So anything that you think can be helpful to communicate to the nursing staff, just keep that communication open, and I think it's welcomed on both ends of the situation.
That's right.
So if you are going to visit somebody who maybe you're not, it's again not a loved one, but maybe somebody that's just a friend, think about some topics that you might want to cover before you go into the hospital. Some people are in for a routine surgery and conversation will be light. Other times the situation might be a little bit more dire, and so it can be hard to figure out what types of topics you want to discuss. It might be a bit uncomfortable. So just maybe have some things in mind. Keep it light and talk about current events. Tell them about what's going on in your life, and
Torture them with Trump. I'm just joking.
I actually spent some time, just reading while Dad was in the hospital, reading to him, reading the newspaper, reading some
books,
some nonfiction books to him, and fiction books as well. So again, if you have a patient who is maybe nonverbal and you're not able to communicate that way, the visitation, the communication, the company is still so important. So if you find that you're not sure what to say, if you're just sitting there, feel free to bring a book, something light, because just the sound of your voice and something to think about, to take their mind off their current situation for a few minutes will be welcome. So just keep that in mind and think about it before you arrive. So other things that you can do to help, if people are in a situation where they have somebody in the hospital, a lot of times everything else can kind of fall by the wayside. So, if there's a storm, maybe they may need help with shoveling their driveway so they can get out to the hospital. So there are other ways that you can help that maybe aren't directly related to the patient, but just helping them keep their day-to-day life going. Maybe you can offer to take pets for a walk, or to help with house sitting if they're having to, go away for. Sometimes people are going down to the IWK or to another city. So
anything to alleviate that stress that they may be experiencing while they're in the hospital. What about the pet? What about they don't have to think about that because it's taken care of.
Right. They may have other family members who want to get in to visit the patient, maybe seniors or people who aren't able to drive for one reason or another. So you could offer to, chauffeur other visitors
That's right.
to the hospital. So just try to be a little creative around that. And having maybe even a schedule set up for visiting the patient. You can even do that if you do set up a private Facebook group. Again, if you have somebody in the hospital long term and you want to make sure that they're getting some company on a regular basis, you could create a calendar through Facebook.
Little visiting schedule.
Exactly. So that you don't have everybody showing up at once. People tend to go on the weekends.
That's stressful for everybody.
It
when
is.
Everybody's there all at once,
Well, and it can be tiring for the patient, and then they may go days without a visitor. So if you can communicate amongst yourselves so that you can kind of spread out those visits, I think everybody would benefit from that. I guess the last item that I wanted to mention is just when you are bringing things into the hospital, be mindful of the fact that space is so limited for nursing staff and doctors to do their work. So if you are bringing in gifts, try to, keep them small or things that don't take up the horizontal surfaces, because you'll see that they have a lot of care items that they just need to have readily available to actually care for the patient. So space is definitely at a premium. And if you
leave the piano at home.
Yes.
They don't need a piano while they're in the hospital. Again, keyboard's okay. Trumpet, why not? Anyway.
You're struggling for the light jokes on this one.
Well, that's my job.
It's a hard topic. It's one that we've covered a lot of light topics, a lot of light tips, and but I felt this is an important one because we all encounter it, and we just feel a little helpless sometimes about what we can do to help somebody.
No, I absolutely agree. The better that we can plan for someone's care while they're in the hospital, the better that they're going to feel, the better that you are going to feel, and you don't need any added stress whatsoever.
So hopefully something that you heard during this episode will be helpful. And
wish.com. No, it's true. I'm joking.
If you remember nothing else, wish.com. And we'll look forward to our next episode where we're going to get into a lighter topic.
Yeah, and we will leave that a secret.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening, everybody. Thanks so much for listening.
And be sure to visit us at InfoQuench.com to subscribe and find out about future episodes.
You can also check out InfoQuench on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Till next time, friends.